The inquiry problem for this presentation is the impact of E. coli and salinity levels on oysters and their ecosystems. This presentation examines how oysters contribute to a river and ocean's ecosystems with a focus on the Big Bay and the Hastings River in Port Macquarie, New South Wales, Australia. The issues of salinity and E. coli not only impact an oyster's development, but the ability to sell the oyster is affected when levels are high, according to David Tunstead from Tunstead Oysters. This topic of inquiry in environmental sustainability is an important one, as not only are oysters vital to the ecosystem, the farmers who grow and distribute the oysters are negatively affected by high E. coli and salinity levels. For a thorough investigation into this inquiry topic, I based my research around three key questions. The first is, how do oysters contribute to the river's ecosystem? Oysters are a vital component of a river's ecosystem. Oysters filter the water, removing both organic and inorganic particles from the water column, which leaves the water cleaner, according to the University of Maryland Centre for Environmental Science. In conjunction with this, an oyster will selectively choose and feed on microscopic phytoplankton or algae and remove the algal biomass from the water, as well as removing other suspended solids from the water and packaging them into bundles, which they then release as pseudofeces, which other organisms then utilize for food. Oysters are considered keystone organisms because if they became extinct, other critters would not survive. My second research question was, what effect does rainfall have on oyster production, and how do oyster farmers test these effects? When heavy rainfall event occurs, it washes cattle effluent and other animal feces off the land and into the water, as well as overloading reticulated sewage systems. This means as storm water enters through the cracks, it causes the system to overflow into the waterways, according to Andy Myers from Ocean Watch. When this happens, oyster farmers and authorities are required to test both the water and oysters for traces of E. coli. When the fresh water from a heavy rainfall enters the river, it significantly reduces the salinity levels. If the salinity level declines by 8 parts per thousand, the oyster will close its lid and cease filtering, feeding, and growing. David Tunstead from Tunstead Oysters believes this becomes very problematic for oyster production, as if this occurs, the oyster cannot be harvested and sold. A project by the University of Florida suggests that salinity levels affect the oyster's ability to filter through bacteria such as E. coli, thus leading to mortality in the oyster. As soon as there is more than 50 millimeters of rain within 48 hours, the Food Authority will close the river for harvest, according to Grant Webster from New South Wales Food Authority. The diagram shown is the process of how the New South Wales Food Authority determine when and how to test. In this time, oyster farmers are not allowed to harvest any oysters from the water until the meat testing has been carried out by the Food Authority to ensure the salinity and E. coli levels are safe, creating a major impact on oyster productions and sales. My final research question was, what can be done to reduce E. coli in the water? Over the last 3 years, there has been a government project implemented through Ocean Watch in the Hastings River to reduce the E. coli levels in the water, known as the Oyster Farmers Environmental Management System, or the EMS. The EMS is a step-by-step process to identify and manage environmental impacts, risks, and opportunities. Although it is driven by local oyster farmers, it is expanding out into the community to increase understanding of cultivation methods and regulations that apply to the community. In New South Wales, 16 of the 32 oyster-producing estuaries operate under the EMS, and while these farmers are improving their own practices, there are still risks to water quality that are beyond the control of the oyster industry, such as unrestricted cattle access to creeks and rivers. Oysters are a crucial component in creating a clean and biologically safe ecosystem in rivers. The effects of salinity levels and E. coli levels are detrimental to the oyster, which not only affects the river's ecosystem, but the production of these oysters for the farmers. This topic could be brought to light more through the community by providing residents with more information on the effects of pollution, including where they wash their cars, pour detergents and chemicals into drains, and marking their garden beds, according to Rex Marks from the Vice President of the Hastings Fishery Council.